Hey there, I'm Mark from Spectrum Pulse, and today we have from Lorraine, I Killed Your Dog. So this is an odd case. For those of you who aren't familiar, Lorraine is an experimental producer out of New York City who works in a sound collage blend of psychedelic pop, jazz, soul, and R&B, and she's amassed a lot of critical acclaim since her debut in 2016. Pretty well connected in the modern art scene, but her material tends to evade easy analysis, and intentionally so. She knows how black art, and black women specifically, can be categorized or marginalized by the music industry, and she likes to challenge and break down some of those barriers for a more interesting blur of aesthetic with identity. So I guess it's a little bit ironic for me that of Lorraine's 3 records, this one, that she describes as her most basic bitch, certainly her most strident and intentional, it's probably the one I've struggled with the most, and I think I know why. There's still a hazy psychedelic blur to how the song fragments tumble together and shift genres in this serene but undulating flow. Credit to some great bass lines and really sharp live drums to keep the momentum going, but it's also probably the most song-focused and varied that Lorraine has ever been in creating more focused moments that stand out in sharper contrast, but they're still kind of fragmented and there's not much in the way of hooks, and that creates more tension across all these impressionistic peaks and valleys meant to simulate the uneven passage of time in relationships, where some moments will feel like these agonizing flashes and some, especially those going into painful loneliness, they feel like they go on forever. Now, Lorraine has described this project as an anti-breakup album, where instead of ending it for what might be a lot of very well justified reasons, it explores the tension in relationships between the struggle to be your messy, authentic self and fitting within a prescribed box for a role that doesn't fit or can enable neglect or abuse, and that will go to some challenging places. The title track is easily the most immediate, where behind waves of pitch correction, she describes in graphic detail murdering your dog until the song flips for her to say, I am your dog. And there's this dead-eyed capriciousness that it's at least effective, certainly more so than some earlier moments where it feels a little less earned. I mean, it might be explainable in the context of a relationship being self-sabotaged or pushed to the brink, where she's intentionally evading any sort of definition, prodding at any walls. I just didn't find it nearly as intriguing or cathartic or funny, especially when there is a lot of sardonic deflection juxtaposed with her most motivated aesthetic choices to date, and how the opening kind of establishes some level of playful unreality. Now, granted, wasn't really helped by my distaste for some of those aesthetic choices in the composition and production. A lot of critics have compared Pet Rock to The Strokes, bypassing how that sound is pulling from The Strokes' least tight or likable era. But the album does come into its own as it fleshes out more nuance, finding love that's allowed to be a little more amorphous and passionate, more give and take, where instead of accepting absolutes, there are more shades of gray, where that passion is at least preferable to crushing, numb loneliness. Although I do appreciate by the end of the project she recognizes the wear that such a sense of uncertainty over time can take on someone. And hell, at least for me, as someone who's been in those frustrated relationships just yearning for more passion against rigid absolutes, I think the more mature catharsis, it resonates. I also think that the aesthetic realization of these ideas is more potent as well, especially as the vocal harmonies become more robust and the crescendos really pick up, like the gentle, hazy folk of 5 to 8 hours a day as the horns pile in, the gradual panic of Remote with the accelerating drums, and that transitions amazingly well into the ethereal jazz freakout of Uncertainty Principle, and it feels even more mystical on Knead Bee, and I just love the cycling drum patter against all the spacey warbles on New Year's UnResolution. For what it's worth, I think this album ends really strong. One of the few times where such an open-ended conclusion has me breathe easier. There's more emotional truth. But as a whole, it's tough to gauge as the emotional resonance takes a few swerves to really land, especially as the capricious touches can feel more edgy, and that contrasts weirdly with some of the sonic choices and Lorraine's consistently pretty delivery. But I also can't deny the basic provocation, it was intentional. And it worked. And it's not like the depth isn't there if you're looking for it. So I will say this is patchy and uneven, all the more human for it, and I do think it's a really compelling listen. But it is tough to recommend if you're not willing to give it a lot of time or introspection, and I don't think treating this project as a challenge is all that smart either. There's more going on than that. It's not as visceral or as dark as the title might imply, but it's all the more disquieting and emotionally true when it feels this real. Take that as you will. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like and subscribe, drop some comments, share this around. I'm genuinely curious where folks are going to fall on this. It's a bit of an obscure album. I think I might have a bigger following than she does on YouTube. But the other thing with this is that even despite all the critical acclaim, it's hitting a weird note. This is probably one of the most difficult albums I'll probably cover this year, at least in terms of fully unpacking it, and given how abstract it intentionally is, but also how emotionally complex it is as well. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, you want to get projects on my schedule, link to my Patreon's right over there. And as always, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse. I'll see you next time.